There's something about small towns. Maybe it's the quiet, or maybe it's what the quiet hides. Ben Callahan had lived in Deerbrook all his life, a tired little town where nothing ever happened, where everyone knew your name, your business, and your sins. He planned on leaving after high school, but his mother got sick, and then the years just slipped away. Now, at 39, he was the last Callahan in town, running the hardware store his father had left him. It started with the whispers, not the gossip kind. No, those were as common as the air. These whispers were different. Late at night, when Ben locked up the store and made his way down Hollow Road, past the abandoned church, he would hear them. Faint voices curling through the trees, just beneath the wind. At first, he told himself it was nothing. The way wind moves through old wood can sound like voices, if you're tired enough. But soon, the whispers started calling his name. The first time it happened, he stopped dead in the road, the hair on his arms rising like hackles. Ben! He turned so fast he nearly tripped over himself. No one was there. The road behind him was empty, just the dark skeleton of the church, its stained glass windows shattered long ago, and the woods beyond, black and silent. He hurried home that night, locked the door, told himself he was imagining things. But deep down, something cold had settled in his bones. Then came the dreams. Ben had never been much of a dreamer, but now, every night, he found himself standing in the woods behind the church. The trees swayed without wind, their trunks twisting like they were alive. A feeling of something unseen pressing in from all sides. The whispers in the trees, clearer now, murmuring things he couldn't quite understand. Until one night when he did. Come see. Ben woke drenched in sweat, his heart pounding against his ribs. He didn't sleep for the rest of the night. By the next evening, exhaustion had sunk deep into his bones. But something else had settled there, too. A terrible, gnawing curiosity. The kind that works its way into your head like a splinter. And so, when he closed up the shop that night, instead of going home, he took the long way down Hollow Road, toward the church. The sky was thick with clouds, the moon just a ghost behind them. The air was still, heavy, like it was holding its breath. He stepped past the broken fence, his boots crunching against the dead leaves, and moved toward the church. The doorway yawned open, a dark mouth waiting to swallow him whole. Inside, it smelled of rotting wood and old stone. The floorboards creaked under his weight. And then the whispering started again. Only this time it wasn't outside. It was inside. Come see. Ben turned, heart hammering, and saw the trapdoor. It had been hidden beneath the old pulpit. A thick wooden door sunk into the ground. He knelt, brushing away the dust, and pried it open. A set of stone steps led down into blackness. A cold breath of air rising from below. Smelled damp, old, wrong. Ben swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed at him to leave, to nail the door shut and never come back. Instead, he stepped down. The darkness swallowed him. The air grew colder with every step. And the whispers. Oh God, the whispers were all around him now, circling his head like flies. At the bottom, the space opened into a small chamber. The walls were stone, damp with moisture. And in the center of the room was a pit. Not just a hole. A pit carved into the earth, deeper than the dark could show. The edges were lined with strange symbols, etched into the stone. Symbols that pulsed, as if alive. The whispers turned into voices. Feed it. Ben stumbled back, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The air felt thick, pressing against his skin, his bones. Feed it. And then he saw the teeth. They rose from the darkness, pale and gleaming, a mouth impossibly large. Rows and rows of jagged fangs, curving like hooks, waiting, hungry. Ben ran. He slammed the trapdoor shut, bolted out of the church, and didn't stop running until he was home, locking the door behind him. But the whispers didn't stay in the woods. That night, they came from inside his house. Feed it. He didn't sleep, didn't eat. He started seeing things, shadows moving in the corners of his vision, shapes that weren't there when he turned. He tried to ignore them, tried to pretend life was normal. But Deerbrook wasn't normal anymore. Not to him. The missing people started a week later. A boy from the next town over, gone without a trace. Then a couple on a hiking trip. Then 2 more. The news barely made a stir. People went missing all the time. But Ben knew. He knew where they had gone. Feed it. The whispers never stopped. One night, he found himself standing outside the church again, not sure how he got there. The trapdoor was open, waiting. Ben took a step forward and smiled. The first time I heard the whispers, I was half asleep, lost in the heavy lull of midnight. It wasn't a voice so much as the breath of one, soft, deliberate, just behind my ear. I turned on the lamp, heart hammering, but the room was empty. Just the wind, I told myself. Just my mind playing tricks. Then it happened again, and again. By the time I truly accepted it, the whispers had become words. Let us in. I moved to Stillwater for the quiet. City life had worn me down, and after my divorce, I needed a place where silence wasn't filled with sirens and regret. The house was old, cheap, and just isolated enough to feel like a fresh start. It sat at the edge of a dense forest, the kind that swallowed light even at noon. The realtor was eager to sell it. It's got history, she said with a forced smile. One of the first homes built in Stillwater. Been empty for years. I should have asked why. The whispers started on the 3rd night. I was brushing my teeth when I heard it, so close it tickled my ear. A child's voice, breathy and cold. Can we come in? I spun, toothpaste dribbling down my chin. Nothing, just the dim reflection of my own face in the mirror, wide-eyed and pale. That night, I locked my bedroom door. It didn't help. The whisper came just before sleep took me, curling through the dark like fingers reaching from beneath the bed. Please. I spent the next day convincing myself it was stress, hallucinations, my mind rebelling against loneliness. But when I returned home that evening, something felt different. The air in the house was heavy, the smell, musty, damp, like wood left to rot. And the silence, it wasn't just quiet, it was hushed, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Then I saw it, a handprint on the window, small, smudged, from the inside. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in bed with every light on, clutching a kitchen knife like it could cut through fear itself. The whispers came at 3:12 a.m., precise as a church bell. Let us in. We're so cold. The voice was clearer now, and it wasn't just one. I felt them before I saw them. The air turned icy, my breath curling in white clouds. Then the shadows in the corner stretched and twisted, shifting into something almost human. Children. Their faces were pale, eyes hollow, mouths moving soundlessly. They stood just beyond the bed, their small hands reaching, begging. I squeezed my eyes shut, chanting, not real, not real, not real. When I opened them, they were gone. But the door was unlocked. I tried to leave the next morning. Packed a bag, threw it in my car, and sped down the gravel road. The town looked at me strangely when I burst into the diner, rambling about ghosts, voices, children that weren't children. An old man at the counter turned, his face lined like tree bark. He studied me, then spoke softly. You bought the Carlson house. I nodded. My hands shook. Who are they? The diner went quiet. Even the radio seemed to dim. The hushed ones, he murmured. They've been there long before any of us. Some say they were orphans locked away when sickness came. Others say worse. His eyes darkened. They whisper so they don't wake the thing that keeps them. A cold shudder crawled down my spine. I didn't go back. I found a motel, called a realtor, and decided that whatever money I lost on the house was worth my sanity. But that night, the whispers followed me. You let us in. I turned the motel lamp on, my breath a ragged tremor. The handprints were on the mirror. I left Stillwater at dawn, drove until the gas light blinked, and kept going. I didn't stop, not even when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Not even when I heard the whisper through the speaker. We're inside now. Ethan Grady knew something was wrong the second he stepped into his new apartment. It wasn't anything obvious, no flickering lights or eerie whispers. Just a feeling, like he'd walked into someone else's skin and it didn't quite fit. The place was on the 7th floor of the Fairhaven Towers, an old brick complex on the edge of town. The kind of building that had history baked into the walls, soaked into the wooden floors. The rent was cheap, suspiciously cheap, But Ethan was fresh out of a bad breakup and needed somewhere, anywhere, that wasn't his ex's couch. He signed the lease without asking too many questions. The landlord, an old guy named Sal, handed him the keys with a look Ethan couldn't quite place. Not pity, not concern, just something. "You keep to yourself," Sal had said. "And if you hear anything at night, don't go looking." Ethan had laughed it off at the time. Old buildings made noise. Creaking pipes, settling wood, all that. But the first night, he woke up cold. Not normal cold, either. The kind that burrowed into your bones. His breath fogged in the dark, and for a moment, he swore he smelled something like damp earth. Like a grave after fresh rain. Then the scratching started. A slow, deliberate sound. A nail or a claw dragging along wood. It came from the wall behind his bed, the one that connected to the last apartment on the left. He held his breath, listening. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Then silence. Ethan told himself it was a rat. Maybe a raccoon had found its way inside the walls. He almost believed it too until he saw the marks the next morning. Deep gouges in the plaster, long and uneven, as if something had been trying to get through. He knocked on the neighbor's door. No answer. He asked Sal about it, but the old man just shook his head. "Ain't nobody lived there for a long time," he muttered and walked away. That night, the scratching turned into knocking. Soft at first, then louder. Insistent. A rhythm. For knocks, a pause, then 3 more. Ethan sat up in bed, heart hammering. The room was freezing again. He grabbed his phone, turned on the flashlight, and pointed it at the wall. Something moved. A shadow, thin and jerky, sliding along the plaster like it was just under the surface. Ethan scrambled back, nearly falling off the bed. The knocking stopped. A whisper replaced it. "Let me in." The voice was distant, but he felt it inside his skull, like a memory of a voice rather than a real sound. He squeezed his eyes shut. When he opened them again, the wall was just a wall. Ethan didn't sleep. The next day, he pounded on Sal's door. "What the hell is in that apartment?" he demanded. Sal sighed. "Not what? Who?" Ethan felt something cold crawl up his spine. "Who?" Sal rubbed his temples. "There was a girl. Lived there years ago. Name was Claire. She went missing. Cops never found her. Some folks say she never left." "That's not possible." Sal looked at him, and for the first time, Ethan saw fear in the old man's eyes. "You think that's bad?" he said. "You ain't the first tenant to hear her, but you're the first one she's spoken to." Ethan spent the day debating whether to leave, but the logical part of his brain kept him grounded. Ghosts weren't real. Maybe he was just stressed. Maybe his mind was messing with him. That night, he locked his bedroom door and wedged a chair under the handle, just in case. At 3:13 a.m., the knocking started again. Then something new. The closet door creaked open. Ethan sat up, breath frozen in his throat. His flashlight beam trembled as he aimed it toward the closet. The door was open just an inch, a black sliver of space. A whisper leaked through it. "Let me in." Ethan's body moved before his brain could catch up. He bolted for the front door, yanking it open. He didn't stop running until he was standing in the parking lot, breath fogging in the night air. The next morning, he called a moving company. He didn't go back inside alone. He paid the movers extra to pack his things without asking questions. Before he left, he found Sal watching him from the lobby. "You leaving already?" the old man asked. Ethan swallowed. "Yeah." Sal nodded like he'd expected that. "One last thing," he said. "Did you ever see her?" Ethan hesitated. "No." Sal let out a slow breath. "Good. That means she hasn't found a way out." Ethan didn't ask what he meant. He didn't want to know. The road leading to Pine Hollow twisted like a snake through the dark forest. To an outsider, it was just another rural town, quiet, uneventful, stuck in time. But the locals knew better. They knew Pine Hollow was cursed. People went missing. Some turned up days later, staring blankly at walls, mumbling about the voices beneath the earth. Others were never seen again. Elliot Graves had no choice but to return. His father had died, leaving him the old house by the lake. He'd sworn never to set foot in Pine Hollow again, but life had a way of dragging you back to the places you feared most. The house was exactly as he remembered, tall and skeletal, with warped wooden steps and windows like vacant eyes. Inside, dust clung to every surface. The scent of mildew and old books filled his nostrils. He expected the silence to be comforting. It wasn't. That first night, he dreamed of his childhood. He was 8 years old, playing in the backyard, when he heard it, the whispering. It came from the earth beneath his feet, a voice like dry leaves scraping together. His father had grabbed him, yanking him inside, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. Never listen to them, his father had warned. If you hear them, you run. Elliot woke up in a cold sweat. Just a dream, he told himself. Just the past crawling into the present. But then he heard it. Soft, almost like the rustling of wind through the trees. But there was no wind that night. Elliot sat up in bed, straining to listen. The whispers weren't coming from outside. They were beneath him. The basement. A rational man would have ignored it, convinced himself it was his imagination. The fear had a strange way of pulling at you, drawing you closer instead of pushing you away. Holding his breath, he crept down the stairs, the wooden planks groaning beneath his weight. The basement door loomed ahead, slightly ajar. A draft curled out from the darkness beyond. He stepped inside. The air was damp and thick, carrying the scent of earth and decay. A single bare bulb flickered overhead. His father's old workbench sat in the corner, untouched for years. Against the far wall, a trapdoor lay half-buried under dust and discarded tools. He didn't remember it being there before. The whispers were louder now. Urgent. Come closer. He hesitated, but something, a force he couldn't name, compelled him forward. His fingers brushed against the wooden handle. The second he touched it, the whispering stopped. Silence pressed in, suffocating. Then the trapdoor yawned open on its own. Blackness stretched below, endless and pulsing like a living thing. A cold draft rose from the pit, carrying a smell that was wrong, like rotten leaves and something metallic. Something old. Elliot stumbled back, heart hammering, but his feet refused to move further. He was paralyzed by an invisible grip, held in place as something shifted in the darkness below. A hand emerged. No, not a hand. The suggestion of one. Fingers too long, bending at angles that made no sense. The skin was translucent, stretched too tight over bone. Then another hand. And another. They clawed at the edge of the trapdoor, pulling something up from the abyss. A face surfaced, if it could be called a face. Its mouth was too wide, filled with rows of jagged teeth. Eyes like black pits swiveled toward him, locking onto his soul. Elliot. The voice was not a whisper anymore. It was inside his head, digging, rooting around. Memories flooded back. His father dragging him inside that day in the yard. The hushed conversations behind closed doors. The townspeople who had vanished. His father had known. And now it knew him. Elliot tried to scream, but the sound died in his throat as the thing lunged forward, wrapping its hands around him. The world turned black. When they found him days later, Elliot was sitting in the basement, staring at the open trapdoor. He was whispering, his voice merging with the rustling of unseen things beneath the earth. They took him away, but Pine Hollow never let go of its own. And at night, when the wind died down and the silence settled in, the whispers continued. It started with the fog. Thick and unnatural, it rolled in every night at exactly 11:47 p.m., swallowing the small town of Ashwood whole. No one knew where it came from. It wasn't normal fog, the kind that smelled of rain or the sea. No, this fog was dry and suffocating, tinged with a sickly metallic scent like old pennies and rusted iron. Ethan Collins had lived in Ashwood all his life. He had seen the fog before, but it never felt like this. It never felt alive. His mother used to warn him, don't go out after midnight when the fog is thick. He thought she was just being superstitious, a small-town relic clinging to old fears. But now, standing at his bedroom window, watching the milky vapor slither through the streets, he wasn't so sure anymore. Something moved in the fog. At first, it was just a flicker, barely noticeable. Then a shape. A figure. It was tall, unnaturally so, its limbs thin and too long. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. He should look away, close the curtains, go back to bed. But something held him there, something cold and paralyzing. The figure turned, and for the briefest moment, Ethan saw its face, or rather, lack of one. Smooth, featureless, like a mannequin sculpted from pale wax. But the worst part? It was looking directly at him. His breath hitched. His body screamed at him to run, to hide, but he was frozen, rooted to the spot. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, the figure was gone, swallowed by the swirling mist. Ethan backed away from the window, his heart hammering. He climbed into bed, pulling the covers up to his chin like a child warding off monsters. Maybe it was just his imagination. Maybe it was a trick of the fog. Then came the whispering. At first, it was soft, almost indistinguishable from the rustling of the wind. Then it grew louder, more insistent. A chorus of voices layered on top of each other, speaking in a language he didn't understand. "Come outside." His stomach twisted. He squeezed his eyes shut. It was just a dream, just a trick of the mind. But then a tap on the window. Ethan's eyes flew open. His breath hitched. Another tap, gentle, rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. It was right outside his window. Summoning every ounce of courage, he forced himself to turn his head. The fog was thicker now, pressing against the glass like a living thing. And there, emerging from the swirling gray, was the face again. Smooth, empty. Watching him, he couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. Then, slowly, the figure lifted a hand and pressed its palm against the glass. The whispering grew louder, forming words now, words that clawed at his mind. "Come outside." Ethan bolted upright, scrambling backward so fast he nearly fell off the bed. The whispers turned into a wail, high-pitched and unnatural. The window rattled. The walls trembled. Then silence. The fog receded. The presence vanished. Ethan sat there, panting, drenched in sweat. He stayed awake until dawn, clutching the baseball bat he kept under his bed. The next morning, he told himself it had been a dream. A vivid, terrifying hallucination. But when he went outside, his stomach dropped. There, on the glass, was a single, smudged handprint. And it wasn't his. The investigation, Ethan wasn't the only one who had seen the figure. The town had its whispers, its hushed conversations behind locked doors. "I heard it last night," Mrs. Holloway, the baker, murmured as Ethan stopped by her shop. "The whispers. I haven't heard them since I was a girl." Ethan's fingers tightened around his coffee cup. "What is it?" Mrs. Holloway hesitated, then leaned in. "They used to call it the Watcher. It comes with the fog. My grandmother warned me, if you see it, if it sees you, it doesn't let you go." A cold shiver ran down Ethan's spine. The next night, he didn't sleep. He waited, and at 11:47 p.m. the fog returned. And so did it. Ethan had left his window open this time. He needed to know to see. The figure emerged from the mist, its faceless head tilting unnaturally. Then, in a motion both jerky and fluid, it stepped toward his house. Toward him. The whispers returned, but this time, they were inside his head. "Come outside, Ethan." His vision blurred. His body was moving before he even realized it, his feet carrying him to the door, his hand gripping the knob. "No, stop." He bit down on his tongue hard, the pain snapping him back to reality. He stumbled backward just as the door handle rattled violently. The thing was inside. A single, breathless whisper filled the room. "We are waiting." Then the power went out. Darkness swallowed him whole. The vanishing Ethan never left Ashwood. No one does, not really. His friends stopped seeing him after that night. His house sat abandoned, coated in a thin layer of dust, as if no one had lived there for years. But sometimes, when the fog rolls in at 11:47 p.m., people swear they hear whispers coming from inside. And if you stand too close, you might hear someone tapping on the window, as if they're trying to get out.